The taste of my own blood was metallic and hot in my mouth as I lay on the manicured grass. Above me, my son-in-law Tyler adjusted his silk tie, his face twisted into a sneer that the 200 wedding guests couldn't quite see. He had just slapped me, a 70-year-old man, hard enough to knock me to the ground. He leaned down, his voice a hiss meant only for my ears. "You are a useless old relic, Jack, and you are going to do exactly what you are told." I looked past his polished shoes, searching for my daughter Brittany. I wanted her to rush over to defend me, to show some shred of the love I had poured into her for 32 years. But Brittany turned her face away, pretending to fix her veil, choosing her husband's cruelty over her father's dignity. They thought they were humiliating a poor, senile corn farmer. They had no idea they had just declared war on Jackson Stone, the retired titan of the steel industry. As I wiped the blood from my lip, I didn't feel fear. I felt a cold, calm rage. Before I tell you how I destroyed their perfect little world in less than a week, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and if you have ever been underestimated by your own family. Hit that like button if you believe that respect is something you earn, not something you demand. My name is Jackson Stone, but everyone in this dusty corner of Texas just calls me Jack. To the locals, I am just an old man driving a rusted pickup truck, struggling to grow corn on the family farm called Stone Ranch. They see the worn-out flannel shirts and the calloused hands, and they see poverty. They don't know that 10 years ago I was the CEO of Stone Industries, one of the largest construction conglomerates in the Midwest. They don't know that I sold my empire for billions and placed it all into blind trusts so I could live a quiet life with my late wife, Martha. She wanted peace, she wanted to grow flowers and watch the sunsets, so I buried the tycoon and became the farmer. But Martha passed away 3 years ago, leaving me with only my daughter, Brittany. Brittany was always a sweet girl, but she was weak, easily swayed by shiny things and loud voices. And nobody was louder or shinier than Tyler. He was a 35-year-old real estate broker with a fake tan, leased luxury cars, and a mountain of debt that he tried to hide under designer suits. I knew he was trouble the moment he stepped onto my porch, looking at my land not as a home but as a subdivision waiting to be developed. But Brittany loved him, or she thought she did, so I paid for the wedding. I wanted her to be happy. The wedding was held on the south lawn of the ranch, a lavish affair with white tents, imported orchids, and a live orchestra. I was sitting at the back, nursing a glass of water, feeling out of place in my old suit. Tyler took the stage for the toasts, holding a glass of champagne high. He loved the sound of his own voice. He thanked the guests, flashed his teeth for the cameras, and then dropped the bomb. And for our biggest announcement, Tyler boomed, gesturing grandly toward the rolling hills behind him. "My generous father-in-law Jack has decided to give us this entire ranch as a wedding gift. Stone Ranch will be the foundation of our future empire." The crowd applauded politely. My blood ran cold. We had never discussed this. This land was Martha's legacy. It was where her ashes were scattered. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the wooden floorboards. I walked toward the stage, my hands trembling, not from age, but from anger. I took the microphone from his hand. "No," I said, my voice steady. "That is not true. This farm is not for sale, and it is not a gift. It belongs to me, and it will stay that way." The silence was instant and suffocating. Tyler's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went dead. He stepped close to me, wrapping an arm around my shoulder in a mock embrace. He squeezed hard enough to bruise. "Don't embarrass us, old man," he whispered. "Just nod and smile, or you will regret it." I pulled away. "I am not giving you this land, Tyler. Not now, not ever." That was when it happened. In one fluid motion, he backhanded me across the face. The force of it caught me off guard, sending me stumbling backward until I hit the ground. The gasp from the crowd was audible. I lay there stunned, tasting the copper tang of blood. That was the moment I looked for Brittany. That was the moment she looked away. Tyler laughed, a nervous barking sound. "Oh, folks, I am so sorry. Dad has been having these spells lately. He gets confused, loses his balance. We are taking care of him, I promise. He signaled to two of his groomsmen, burly guys who looked more like bouncers than friends. They hauled me up by my arms and escorted me to the parking lot like a criminal. Go home, Jack, one of them sneered. Let the happy couple enjoy their night. I climbed into my old truck, my cheek throbbing, my heart breaking. I drove the 2 miles up the dirt road to the main farmhouse, the place I had built with my own hands. I just wanted to wash my face, take my blood pressure medication, and sleep. But when I got to the main gate, my remote didn't work. I pressed the button again. Nothing. I got out and walked to the keypad. It was brand new. A sleek, digital smart lock with a camera had replaced the old iron padlock I had used for years. The red light blinked at me, mocking me. Access denied. A sleek black SUV tore up the driveway behind me, kicking up a cloud of dust. It was Tyler and Brittany. They hadn't even stayed for their own cake. Tyler jumped out, still in his tuxedo, looking energized, manic. What is this? I asked, pointing to the lock. Security, Jack Tyler said, walking past me to the gate. He punched in a code and the gate swung open. He stood in the opening, blocking my path. Since you are obviously mentally declining, as we saw at the wedding, Brittany and I have decided to take over the management of the property. For your own safety. Brittany sat in the passenger seat of the SUV, staring straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact. I live here, Tyler. My medicine is in there. My clothes. Not anymore, he said. He reached into the back of the SUV and grabbed 2 black garbage bags. He tossed them onto the dusty ground at my feet. One of them split open, spilling my shirts and my heart medication into the dirt. We are moving into the main house tonight, he said, his voice dripping with triumph. We need the space, but we are not heartless. He pointed a manicured finger toward the far edge of the property near the tree line. You can stay in the old tractor shed. It has a roof. That is more than you deserve after the stunt you pulled today. The shed. It was a corrugated metal shack that hadn't been used in 20 years. It was filled with rusted parts, rat nests, and spider webs. It had no insulation, no running water, and a dirt floor. Tyler. I warned, my voice low. You are making a mistake. The only mistake was thinking you still mattered, he spat. Now get your trash and get out of my sight before I call the sheriff and have you committed for senile dementia. I have friends in town, Jack. They will believe me, not a crazy old man. He got back in the car. Brittany didn't say a word. They drove through the gate and I watched as the electronic lock buzzed and clicked shut, sealing me out of the life I had built. I gathered my things from the dirt, dusting off the pill bottles. I walked the half-mile to the tractor shed in the dark. I pushed open the creaking metal door. The smell of stale oil and rodent droppings hit me instantly. I cleared a space on the workbench and sat down on an overturned bucket. The moonlight filtered through the holes in the roof, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My cheek was swelling up. My body ached. I felt every day of my 70 years. But as I sat there in the dark, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of Tyler blasting music in my house, I felt something else stirring. The part of me that I had buried when I married Martha. The ruthlessness that had crushed competitors and negotiated billion-dollar contracts. I reached into my boot and pulled out a loose floorboard near the back of the shed. I had hidden it there years ago, just a habit from a lifetime of being prepared. I pulled out a waterproof Pelican case. Inside was a fully charged satellite phone and a black notebook. I powered on the phone. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. I dialed a number I hadn't called in a decade. It rang once. Benedict, I said. The voice on the other end was crisp, alert, and familiar. Benedict was the CEO of the largest private bank in the state and the only man who knew the full extent of my assets. Mr. Stone, Benedict asked, surprise evident in his tone. It has been a long time. Is everything all right? No, Benedict, I said, staring at the lights of the farmhouse where my ungrateful daughter and her husband were celebrating their theft. Activate the protocols. I am coming out of retirement. There was a pause and then a sound I knew well, the sound of a soldier receiving marching orders. "Understood, sir. What is the target?" I leaned back against the rusted metal wall, the taste of blood still on my tongue. "The target is Tyler. I want to know everything. His debts, his secrets, his sins. I want to know who owns him. And Benedict." "Yes, sir. Do not be gentle." I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness. Tyler thought he had put an old horse out to pasture. He didn't know. He had just locked himself in a cage with a tiger. The slap was the beginning. The end would be total annihilation. The darkness in the tractor shed was absolute, broken only by the scurrying sounds of rats in the corners and the rhythmic dripping of a leaky pipe somewhere in the roof. I sat on the overturned bucket, my back against the cold metal wall, watching the main house through a crack in the corrugated siding. The luxury SUV Tyler had driven earlier was parked out front, gleaming under the security lights like a black beetle. My stomach growled, a hollow reminder that I had not eaten since the wedding toast that never happened. But hunger was an old friend I knew how to ignore. I was waiting. In my experience, desperate men make mistakes, and Tyler was nothing if not desperate. Around 2 a.m, the silence of the ranch was shattered by the crunch of gravel. A heavy vehicle was approaching, driving fast and reckless up the long driveway. It was not a delivery truck. 2 beams of high-intensity headlights swept across the yard, briefly illuminating my shed before settling on the front porch of the farmhouse. A matte gray pickup truck with tinted windows came to a halt, the engine idling with a deep, menacing rumble. I watched as the front door of the house flew open. Tyler stepped out, wrapped in a silk dressing gown, looking small and terrified. He did not look like the master of the estate anymore. 2 men stepped out of the truck. They were big, dressed in cheap leather jackets and heavy boots. I recognized the type immediately. They were not bankers or lawyers. They were muscle, the kind of debt collectors who didn't care about credit scores, only about broken bones. I pressed my ear against the cold metal of the shed wall, straining to hear over the wind. The larger man walked up the steps, invading Tyler's personal space until he was nose to nose with my son-in-law. "You are hard to reach, Tyler," the man said, his voice carrying a heavy, gravelly edge. "We do not like it when people are hard to reach." "I lost my phone," Tyler stammered, his hands shaking as he tightened his robe. "I was going to call you tomorrow. I have the money coming. I swear." "We heard that last week," the man said, shoving Tyler backward. He stumbled but caught himself on the porch railing. "The market crashed, Tyler. Your crypto wallet is empty. But Mr. Russo is not a man who cares about market fluctuations. He lent you $5 million real money, not internet tokens, and he wants it back. $5 million. I let out a slow breath in the darkness. The idiot had not just overspent on cars and clothes. He had gambled with money he did not have, likely leveraging assets he did not own. "I just need a few more days," Tyler pleaded, his voice rising in panic. "I have the ranch now. My father-in-law gave it to me. It is worth millions. I just need to get the deed transferred." The second man stepped forward, pulling something from his jacket. It glinted in the porch light. A knife. He drove it into the wooden railing, with a violent thud inches from Tyler's hand. "You have 5 days," the first man said calmly. "Friday at noon. If we do not have the cash, we take a finger for every hour you are late. And after the fingers are gone, we start on your pretty wife." Tyler whimpered, actually whimpered, and slumped against the wall. The men got back into their truck and reversed out, leaving a cloud of dust and the scent of gasoline hanging in the air. I watched Tyler stand there for a long time, staring at the knife still quivering in the wood, before he yanked it out and ran inside, slamming the door. I sat back on my bucket, the adrenaline sharpening my mind. 5 days. That was the timeline. Tyler was cornered, terrified, and dangerous. He needed to liquefy my assets immediately to save his own skin. This was my opening. I needed to know exactly how he planned to convert a dirt farm into $5 million in less than a week. Land deals took months. He had something else in mind. I reached into my waterproof case and pulled out 3 small black discs. They were high-powered audio transmitters, relics from a corporate espionage case I had dealt with in the 90s, but updated with modern batteries Benedict had ensured were fresh. I needed to get inside the house. When the sun rose, painting the sky in streaks of purple and orange, I made my move. I ruffled my hair until it stood up in wild tufts. I unbuttoned my flannel shirt so it hung unevenly and rubbed some dirt on my cheek. I hunched my shoulders, practicing a tremor in my right hand. I was no longer Jackson Stone. I was just a confused, frightened old man. I shuffled up to the back door of the kitchen and knocked timidly. Through the glass, I saw Tyler sitting at the island, his head in his hands. Brittany was pouring coffee, her eyes red and puffy. When she saw me, she froze. Tyler looked up, his face a mask of exhaustion and residual fear. "What do you want, old man?" he barked through the glass. I shivered theatrically, wrapping my arms around myself. "My medicine," I called out, my voice wavering. "Please, Tyler. My chest hurts." I left my pills on the counter. He stared at me with disgust, but then he unlocked the door. He probably figured a dead father-in-law would bring police scrutiny he did not need right now. "Get in here," he snapped, "and make it quick." I stumbled inside, the warmth of the kitchen hitting me. The smell of fresh coffee was agonizing, but I focused on the mission. I moved slowly toward the counter, where my pill bottles still sat in a pile. "Don't just stand there looking useless," Tyler sneered. He looked down at his Italian leather loafers. They were dusty from his encounter on the porch the night before. "If you are going to be in my house, you can earn your keep. These boots are filthy. Clean them." Brittany gasped. "Tyler, you can't ask him to do that." "Shut up, Brittany," he slammed his hand on the table. "He is living here for free. He can clean a pair of shoes." I looked at my daughter. She bit her lip and looked away, retreating into her silence. I lowered my head, playing the part. "Yes, Tyler. Of course. I am sorry. I will clean them." I grabbed a rag from the sink and knelt at his feet. The humiliation burned hot and fierce, but I swallowed it. As I bowed my head, scrubbing the dust from his shoes, my shaking hand slipped under the lip of the heavy granite island overhang. With a quick, practiced movement, I pressed the first transmitter into the wood. It stuck instantly. "Good," Tyler muttered, kicking his foot slightly, so I would have to reach further. "Now get your pills and get out. I have business to conduct." I grabbed my medication, my hand trembling genuinely now from the effort of suppressing my rage. I shuffled out the back door, clutching the bottles to my chest like a lifeline. As soon as the door clicked shut, I dropped the act. I walked briskly back to the shed, the morning air cooling the sweat on my forehead. I secured the door and sat at my workbench. I put the small earpiece in and turned on the receiver. The audio was crystal clear. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Tyler pouring himself a drink. It was 8 in the morning, and he was already drinking. "He is gone," I heard Tyler say. "God, he is pathetic." "Did you see him shaking, Tyler?" Brittany's voice was soft, wavering. "Those men last night. You said it was just a business dispute. They had a knife." "It is handled," Tyler snapped. "Stop whining. I just need to close the deal." He dialed a number. I heard the ringtone through the earpiece. "Mr. Sterling." Tyler's voice changed instantly, becoming smooth, confident, the voice of a salesman. "Yes, I have the deed. The old man is incapacitated. I have power of attorney pending. Yes, we can sign today." I listened, my pen hovering over my notebook. "Who was Sterling?" "I have the geological survey right here," Tyler continued. "The lithium concentration in Sector 4 is higher than we projected. It is a gold mine, literally." "Well, a lithium mine." I froze. "Lithium." "I am ready to short sell the mineral rights immediately," Tyler said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I know the land is technically agricultural, but once you have the rights, rezoning is a formality. I am offering you exclusive access for 20 million. A steal for what is under that dirt. I took the earpiece out, my hand shaking for real this time. Tyler wasn't just selling the farm to pay off a gambling debt. He had found out about the lithium deposit. A deposit I had discovered 20 years ago. A deposit Martha and I had agreed to never touch because strip mining would destroy the land she loved. We had buried those reports. We had sworn to protect this place. And now my son-in-law was selling the very soul of this earth to a conglomerate for pennies on the dollar, engaging in a short sale of assets he didn't even legally own yet. He was committing massive fraud, environmental destruction, and theft on a scale that was breathtaking. I looked at the photo of Martha I had rescued from the trash. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes were fierce. He is not just selling a house, I whispered to the empty shed. He is selling our promise. I put the earpiece back in. Tyler was laughing now. Yeah, the old man has no clue. He thinks we are growing corn. He is sitting on a fortune, and he is too stupid to know it. I will have the papers ready. I clenched my fist until my knuckles turned white. You are wrong, Tyler. The old man knows exactly what is under the ground, and he knows exactly where to bury you. I waited until the afternoon heat was at its peak, knowing that Tyler would be hiding in the air-conditioned comfort of my study, likely nursing another drink to calm his nerves. I grabbed an old bucket and a rusty hoe, looking for all the world like a senile old man going to tend to a non-existent garden. I shuffled past the kitchen window, making sure he saw me wandering aimlessly toward the tree line. Once I was under the canopy of the oaks, my posture straightened. The shuffle disappeared. I moved with the silent precision of the man I used to be, navigating the dense underbrush of the north woods until I reached the old logging road that bordered the property. A black sedan with tinted windows was already waiting, its engine idling quietly. As I emerged from the brush, the back door opened, and Benedict stepped out. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than Tyler's entire wardrobe, his shoes polished to a mirror shine that looked ridiculous in the dust of the dirt road. But Benedict didn't care about the dust. He cared about loyalty. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect he hadn't offered anyone else in 20 years. Mr. Stone, he said, his voice low and grave. It is good to see you upright. When you called, I feared the worst. I brushed the dirt from my flannel shirt and leaned against the hood of his car. I am fine, Benedict. Old, tired, and angry, but fine. Tell me what you found. Benedict reached into the car and pulled out a thick leather portfolio. He opened it on the hood, spreading out a series of high-resolution photographs and documents. It is worse than we thought, sir. Tyler isn't just desperate. He is reckless. He pointed to a document with a signature at the bottom. It was my signature, or rather a very good forgery of it. He filed this with the county clerk this morning electronically, Benedict explained. It is a preliminary affidavit of competency, claiming you have granted him full power of attorney due to cognitive decline. He used a notary who has been dead for 6 months. That alone is a felony. I looked at the paper. My hand didn't shake. I felt a cold detachment, like I was looking at a business case study rather than the theft of my own life. Keep going, I said. Benedict flipped the page. Here's the kicker. He has already taken a down payment from the Sterling Energy Consortium. $2 million wired to an offshore account in the Caymans this morning. He used the geological survey you hid 20 years ago as collateral. He is promising them exclusive mining rights to the lithium deposit. I stared at the map of my ranch, the red lines drawn across the cornfields where Martha used to walk in the evenings. Those red lines mark the destruction of everything she loved. He is selling land he doesn't own yet, I murmured. He is selling promises based on a forged signature and a dead notary. Precisely, Benedict said, closing the folder with a snap. And that gives us him. I have a team of federal agents on standby. I can have the FBI here within the hour. We can arrest him for wire fraud, forgery, and elder abuse before the sun sets. We can stop the sale, Mr. Stone. We can save the ranch right now. I looked at Benedict. I saw the concern in his eyes, the desire to protect me. He wanted to end this quickly. He wanted to put the old lion back in his cage where he was safe. "No," I said. Benedict blinked. "Sir," I said, "no. Do not call the FBI. Not yet. But sir, the risk. If he signs the final contract." "If he signs the final contract," I interrupted, my voice hard as steel, "then he has committed irrevocable fraud against a multinational corporation. Right now, if we stop him, he gets a slap on the wrist. He claims it was a misunderstanding, a family dispute. He gets probation. He walks away." I looked back through the trees toward the house where Tyler was currently sitting in my chair, drinking my whiskey, and planning to destroy my legacy. I want him to sign Benedict. I want him to stand on a stage in front of witnesses and sign his name to a lie that will bury him. I want him to feel the victory. I want him to think he has won. And then when he is at the very top of the mountain, I want to push him off. Benedict looked at me for a long moment, studying my face. He must have seen the shadow of the man who had built Stone Industries from nothing, the man who had crushed competitors without blinking. He nodded slowly. "The scorched earth policy," Benedict said softly. "I haven't seen you like this since the hostile takeover in '95. They hurt my daughter, Benedict. They turned her against me. They disrespected my wife's memory. There is no mercy for this. Let him sign. Let him dig his own grave so deep he will never climb out." "Understood," Sir Benedict said. He reached into the car and handed me a small encrypted flash drive. "This contains the real ownership records of the Stone Trust. The moment he signs that contract with Sterling, the land doesn't transfer. The trust automatically locks the assets if a fraudulent signature is detected. We set the trap this morning. The moment he puts pen to paper, the system flags it. He won't just be broke. He will be federally indicted." "Good," I said, pocketing the drive. "Stay close, Benedict. I will signal you when the party starts." I watched the black car disappear down the logging road, leaving me alone in the silence of the woods. I felt heavy, not with age, but with the weight of what I was about to do. I was about to destroy my son-in-law, and in doing so, I was going to break my daughter's heart. But she needed to learn. She needed to see the monster she had married for what he truly was. I made my way back through the woods, moving slower this time, letting the exhaustion settle back into my bones. I needed to look the part. I rubbed some mud on my knees and let my shoulders slump. I emerged from the tree line near the back of the barn, expecting the yard to be empty. I was wrong. Standing by the door of the tractor shed, her arms crossed over her chest, was Brittany. My heart hammered against my ribs. I froze. There was nowhere to hide. She had seen me coming from the woods. She saw that I wasn't confused. She saw that I wasn't shuffling. For a split second, I stood tall, the father she used to look up to. Then instincts took over and I let the tremor return to my hands. But it was too late. She had seen enough. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling. I walked toward her, stopping a few feet away. She looked tired. The stress of the last few days was etching lines around her eyes that shouldn't be there at 32. "Where were you?" she asked. "You weren't in the shed." I checked. "And you weren't walking in the yard. You came from the woods. You were walking normal." I looked at my daughter. This was it. The crossroads. I could lie to her, play the senile old man, and keep her in the dark until the hammer fell. Or I could give her one last chance. One chance to choose her father over the parasite she had married. One chance to save herself before the ship went down. I took a step closer, dropping the act completely. My voice was clear and strong when I spoke, the voice she hadn't heard since before her mother died. "I was taking a walk, Brittany. Thinking." She stepped back, her eyes widening. You sound different. You sound like you used to." "I am who I have always been, honey." I looked toward the house. "Tyler is in trouble, Brittany. Real trouble. The men who came last night, they aren't going away. And the deal he is trying to make with the lithium, it is a lie. He is selling things that don't belong to him. She flinched as if I had slapped her. How do you know about the lithium? How do you know about any of that? It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that he is going to ruin you. He is going to drag you down with him into a pit of debt and prison. I can stop it, but you have to trust me. You have to come with me right now. Leave him. We can fix this. Tears welled up in her eyes. She looked at the house, then back at me. I saw the conflict warring in her face, the fear of her husband versus the love for her father. He says you are sick, Dad. He says you don't know what you are saying. I stepped forward and took her hands. Her palms were cold. Look at me. Do I look sick? Do I look confused? Tyler is a liar, Brittany. He slapped me. He threw me in a shed like a dog. Is that the man you love? Is that the man you want to protect? She pulled her hands away, sobbing. He is under a lot of pressure. He is trying to save us. He loves me. He loves your inheritance, I said harshly. He loves the idea of being rich. Stop it, she screamed, backing away. Just stop it. You are trying to ruin everything. The back door of the house banged open. Tyler strode out onto the porch, a drink in his hand, his face flushed with anger. What is going on out here? He shouted. Brittany. Why are you talking to him? Brittany looked at me, then at Tyler. This was the moment, the choice. I held her gaze, pleading silently. Choose me. Please choose me. Brittany wiped her face, her expression hardening. She turned toward her husband. Dad was wandering in the woods, Tyler. He is talking crazy again. He is saying things about the lithium deal. He is acting weird. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She had chosen. She had betrayed me to the enemy. Tyler's eyes narrowed. He set his drink down on the railing and walked down the steps, a dangerous smile playing on his lips. Is that so? He thinks he knows about business, does he? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. He walked right past Brittany, ignoring her tears, and came for me. Well, since you are so lucid, Jack Tyler said, grabbing my arm and dragging me toward the shed. It is time we made things official. I am done waiting. You are going to sign this power of attorney right now, or so help me God. You won't live to see the sunset. Tyler shoved me into the tractor shed with enough force that I stumbled and fell onto the dirt floor. The impact sent a jolt of pain through my hip, but I barely felt it over the crushing weight of my daughter's betrayal. Brittany stood in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the blinding afternoon sun, watching her husband manhandle her 70-year-old father. She didn't step forward to help me. She didn't scream for him to stop. She just hugged her arms around herself, making herself small, choosing the path of least resistance. Get up, Tyler screamed, kicking the old wooden workbench. Get up and sign the papers, Jack. I am done playing games with you. I pushed myself up to my knees, brushing the dust from my flannel shirt. I looked up at him. He was sweating, his eyes wide and frantic, the look of a man who feels the noose tightening around his neck. He was terrified of the men who had come the night before, terrified of losing his status, terrified of being exposed as a fraud. And terror makes men dangerous. You are making a mistake, Tyler, I said calmly, my voice steady despite the situation. You think this signature will save you. It won't. It will only seal your fate. Shut up, he yelled. He looked around the shed, frantically searching for something, anything, to force my hand. His eyes landed on the gun rack above the workbench. It held my old Remington shotgun, a weapon I hadn't fired in years, kept there for coyotes and snakes. Tyler grabbed the gun. He fumbled with the action, his hands shaking, checking to see if it was loaded. It was. I always kept it loaded. He spun around and leveled the barrel at my chest. Sign the power of attorney, Jack. Right now. Brittany let out a strangled sob from the doorway. Tyler, no! You can't. He didn't take his eyes off me. Shut up, Brittany. He is giving us no choice. He is senile. He doesn't know what he is doing. We have to take control before he ruins everything. I looked past the gun barrel at my daughter. This was it. The final chance for redemption. Brittany, I said softly. He owes $5 million to the Russo crime family. He lost it all on crypto. He is not trying to save the ranch. He is trying to save his own fingers. For a second, I saw doubt in her eyes. She looked at Tyler, her lips parting. Tyler. Is that true? Tyler didn't flinch. He pressed the barrel of the gun against my forehead. The metal was cold and smelled of gun oil. He is lying, Brittany. Look at him. He is crazy. He is making up stories about mobsters and millions because his brain is rotting. Do you believe your husband or this confused old man? Brittany looked at me, looked at the gun, and then she broke. She couldn't handle the truth. It was too big, too terrifying. So she retreated into the lie. Just sign it, Dad, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please, just give him what he wants so we can stop this. You are sick. You don't understand. Her words cut deeper than any bullet could. She wasn't just afraid. She had convinced herself that I was the villain, that my resistance was the symptom of a disease, not a desperate attempt to save her. Tyler grinned, sensing his victory. See, Jack. Even your daughter knows you are finished. Now sign the paper. Or I swear to God I will paint this shed with your brains and tell the sheriff it was an accident while we were cleaning the gun. I looked into his eyes. He meant it. He was desperate enough to kill. If I refused, I died and he would likely forge the signature anyway or find another way to sell the land. If I died, I couldn't protect the legacy. I couldn't protect the land Martha loved. I need a pen, I said. Tyler let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for minutes. He lowered the gun slightly, keeping it aimed at my chest, and reached into his pocket with his free hand. He tossed a black ballpoint pen onto the dirt in front of me. Then he threw the document down beside it. It was a general power of attorney granting Tyler full legal authority over all my assets, my property, and my medical decisions. It was a death warrant for my freedom. I picked up the paper and smoothed it out on the dusty workbench. My hands were steady now. The tremor I had faked earlier was gone. I was Jackson Stone, the man who had negotiated with unions, fought off hostile takeovers, and survived corporate wars. I knew when to fight and when to faint. I uncapped the pen. I looked at the signature line. Tyler was breathing heavily over my shoulder, the gun barrel digging into my back. Do it, he hissed. I put the pen to the paper. And then I executed the move that would end him. In the world of high finance and private banking, where clients have assets in the hundreds of millions, security is paramount. Benedict and I had established a protocol 10 years ago, a failsafe in case I was ever kidnapped, coerced, or forced to sign documents under duress. It was called the distress signature. To the naked eye, my signature looked normal. Jackson E. Stone. The loops were sweeping, the letters connected. But there was a key difference. A difference that no machine learning algorithm or casual observer would catch, but one that Benedict's verification team would spot instantly. Normally, the loop on the J in Jackson crossed the vertical line at the bottom. Today, I broke the loop at the top, leaving a microscopic gap, and instead of a period after the middle initial E, I used a small horizontal dash. It was a signal, a silent scream. It told the bank that I was signing under threat of death. It told the trust algorithms to freeze every single asset lock, every account, and flag every transaction as fraudulent. It triggered a Level 1 security protocol that would alert the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I finished the signature with a flourish and capped the pen. I handed the document to Tyler. There I said, my voice devoid of emotion. You have what you want. You are the king of the castle. Tyler snatched the paper from my hand. He scanned the signature, his eyes manic. He didn't see the trap. He only saw the dollar signs. He only saw his salvation. Yes, he screamed, pumping his fist in the air. Yes, finally. He lowered the gun and shoved me back onto the bucket. You did the right thing, old man, he said, laughing, a sound that bordered on hysteria. You finally made yourself useful. Now stay here. Don't come out. Don't come to the house. I have calls to make. We are going to be rich. Brittany rich. He grabbed Brittany by the arm and dragged her out of the shed, leaving the gun on the workbench, as if I were no longer a threat worth worrying about. Brittany looked back at me one last time before the door slammed shut. Her eyes were filled with shame, but she didn't stop. She followed the money. I sat alone in the dim light of the shed. I picked up the shotgun and unloaded it, placing the shells in my pocket. I wouldn't need it. The weapon I had just used was far more powerful. I pulled out my satellite phone and sent a single text message to Benedict. It is done. The signature is compromised. Let him run. I leaned back against the wall and closed my eyes. Tyler thought he had won. He was going to call the Sterling Energy Consortium. He was going to fax them the power of attorney. He was going to set up the closing for Friday, confident that the money would flow into his account just in time to pay off the mob. He didn't know that he was walking into a minefield. He didn't know that the moment that document hit the banking system, the wheels of justice would start turning. He was going to climb to the very top of the mountain just as I had planned. And when he fell, the impact would be catastrophic. I listened to the sounds of celebration coming from the main house. Music was blaring again. They were probably opening champagne, toasting to their cleverness, toasting to the defeat of the senile old man. Enjoy it, Tyler, I whispered into the darkness. Drink your wine, hug my daughter, because tomorrow the hangover begins, and it is going to last for the rest of your life. The sun had barely risen when the trucks started arriving, transforming my quiet farm into a stage for Tyler's grand performance. White tents were erected over the very soil where Martha used to plant her prize-winning tulips, crushing the stems into the mud. Catering vans unloaded crates of expensive champagne and trays of hors d'oeuvres that cost more than what I had spent on food in the last 6 months. It was Friday, the deadline. The mobsters wanted their $5 million by noon, and Tyler was cutting it close, turning the sale of the mineral rights into a public spectacle to soothe his bruised ego and prove to the town that he was the new king of Stone Ranch. I watched from the tractor shed window as Tyler strutted around the yard barking orders at the workers. He wore a white linen suit that looked ridiculous against the dusty backdrop of the barn, but he wore it like armor. He looked manic, his eyes darting constantly to the driveway, checking for the arrival of the Sterling Energy Consortium representatives. He needed that signature. He needed that check. Around 10 in the morning, the shed door banged open. Tyler stood there holding a bundle of clothes. He tossed them onto the dirt floor at my feet. "Put these on, Jack," he commanded, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. I looked at the pile. It was a moth-eaten, oversized tuxedo jacket I had bought at a thrift store 30 years ago for a costume party paired with stained work pants that were 2 sizes too big. "You want to be part of the family?" Tyler said, stepping closer to loom over me. "You can earn your keep. Today is the biggest day of my life. I am signing the deal of the century. And you, my dear father-in-law, are going to serve the drinks. I want everyone to see exactly where you belong. Serving me." It was petty. It was childish. It was designed to break whatever shred of dignity he thought I had left. To parade the senile old man in clown clothes before the local elite, showing them that the old guard was dead and he was the future. I picked up the jacket. It smelled of mothballs and dust. "As you wish, Tyler," I said, keeping my head low, hiding the fire in my eyes. "Good," he sneered. "And don't speak unless spoken to. Just pour the wine and look pathetic. It shouldn't be hard for you." I dressed in the rags he provided. The pants bunched at my waist, held up by a piece of twine I found on the workbench. The jacket swallowed me whole. I looked like a scarecrow. I looked harmless. It was perfect. By 11, the guests began to arrive. They were a mix of local politicians, small-time investors Tyler was trying to impress, and the few friends he had managed to keep despite his gambling debts. Brittany was there wearing a dress that was too tight and a smile that was too brittle. She avoided looking at me as I moved through the crowd with a silver tray of champagne flutes. Tyler was in his element holding court near the makeshift bar. "This is just the beginning," I heard him boast to the mayor of our small town. "Once the lithium extraction starts, this whole county is going to boom. And I will be the one holding the keys." I approached the group, my head bowed, offering drinks. "Ah, look who it is," Tyler announced loudly, silencing the conversation. "Everyone you remember, Jack, my father-in-law. He is a little confused these days, but he insists on helping out. Don't you, Jack?" I nodded, my hand shaking just enough to make the glasses clink. "Yes, sir." The guests laughed nervously, shifting their feet. It was uncomfortable, cruel, and exactly what Tyler wanted. But as I moved through the crowd playing the servant, I began to work. I wasn't just serving drinks. I was serving notice. I approached Mr. Henderson, the president of the local planning commission. He was a man who had taken bribes for years to rezone agricultural land for commercial use, paving the way for strip malls that destroyed local businesses. He reached for a glass of wine, not even looking at me. I leaned in close, pouring the red liquid slowly. "Mr. Henderson," I whispered, my voice low and devoid of the senile tremor I used for Tyler. "The Cayman account ending in 452 just got flagged by the IRS. Benedict sends his regards." Henderson froze. His hand stopped mid-air. He looked at me, his eyes wide with sudden terror. He opened his mouth to speak, but I had already moved on. Within 2 minutes, I saw him checking his phone frantically, his face pale as a sheet, before he hurried toward his car without saying goodbye to anyone. Next was Mrs. Gable, the town gossip and wife of the bank manager who had approved Tyler's fraudulent loans. She was laughing loudly at one of Tyler's jokes. I offered her a napkin. "Mrs. Gable," I murmured, "your husband's second apartment in the city, the one under his mistress's name. The deed just became public record. You might want to check your joint accounts before they are frozen." She choked on her laughter. The glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the grass. She stared at me, trembling, seeing not the confused old farmer, but something dark and knowing in my eyes. She grabbed her purse and ran, leaving Tyler confused in mid-sentence. I continued my rounds. A corrupt building inspector, a lawyer who laundered money for the local drug trade, a real estate developer who used arson to clear properties. I knew them all. Benedict's dossier had been thorough. With a few whispered words, a few specific account numbers, a few mentioned dates, I dismantled Tyler's audience. The crowd thinned rapidly. Guests were suddenly remembering urgent appointments, family emergencies, forgotten meetings. The atmosphere shifted from celebration to unease. Tyler noticed. He looked around, his smile faltering as he saw his VIPs fleeing the scene. "Where is everyone going?" he demanded, grabbing my arm as I passed. "What are you doing, old man? Are you spilling drinks on them?" "I just poured the wine, Tyler," I mumbled, reverting to the act. "They just seemed anxious." He shoved me away. "Useless. Go stand over there. The Sterling representatives are here. That is all that matters." A hush fell over the remaining guests as a sleek, armored limousine turned into the driveway, flanked by 2 black security SUVs. This was it. The money. The Sterling Energy Consortium didn't do things by halves. They were here to buy a gold mine for pennies, and they brought the cavalry. The convoy stopped in front of the house. Tyler straightened his tie, running a hand through his hair, his arrogance returning in a rush. He walked down the steps to greet them, the lord of the manor welcoming his vassals. Drivers opened the doors of the limousine. A team of lawyers in sharp suits stepped out carrying briefcases. And then the main representative emerged. He was a tall man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a face carved from granite. He wore a bespoke navy suit that cost more than Tyler's car. He surveyed the ranch with a critical eye, ignoring Tyler's outstretched hand for a moment, before shaking it briefly, dismissively. "Mr. Sterling," Tyler gushed, his voice cracking slightly. "I mean, Mr. Caldwell, I am honored. Welcome to Stone Ranch, or should I say the future site of the Sterling lithium mine. Mr. Caldwell didn't smile. He looked at the tents, the mud, the dwindling crowd of nervous guests. We are here to sign, Mr. Jacobs. Caldwell said, his voice dry and professional. We have the wire transfer ready pending the final signatures. My geologists are anxious to begin the surveys immediately. Of course, Tyler said, guiding them toward a large table set up under the main tent. Everything is ready. I have the power of attorney right here. The old man, he gestured vaguely toward me. He signed everything over yesterday. I stood in the shadows of the tent flap, still holding the silver tray. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. I recognized Mr. Caldwell. 30 years ago, he was just Jonathan, a junior analyst at my firm. I had mentored him. I had taught him how to read a balance sheet, how to spot a liar, and how to value integrity over profit. He had left Stone Industries to forge his own path, but he knew the face of the man who had made him. Tyler sat at the head of the table. He pulled out the power of attorney document, the one with my distressed signature, and laid it down with a flourish. The Sterling lawyers opened their briefcases, producing the purchase agreement. It was a thick stack of papers, the death warrant for my land. This is a momentous day, Tyler declared, picking up a gold pen. With this signature, I am securing the future of this family. He looked at Brittany, who was standing behind him, looking pale and sick. Smile, honey, he hissed. We are rich. He put the pen to the paper. He was seconds away from the wire transfer that would save his life and destroy mine. He was glowing with greed. Champagne, he shouted without looking up. Jack. Bring the champagne for our guests. I stepped out of the shadows. I didn't shuffle. I didn't shake. I walked with the heavy, purposeful stride of a CEO entering a boardroom. I placed the tray on the table with a loud clatter that made everyone jump. Tyler looked up, annoyed. Careful, you idiot. You almost... His voice died in his throat. He saw my face. The mask was gone. The confusion was gone. There was only ice. Mr. Caldwell looked up at the disturbance. He frowned, annoyed at the clumsy waiter, and then his eyes locked onto mine. His pen froze in midair. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping backward, his face draining of color as recognition slammed into him. Tyler didn't notice Caldwell's reaction. He was too busy staring at me. What are you doing? Tyler whispered. Get back in the shed. I ignored him. I looked directly at Caldwell. Hello, Jonathan, I said, my voice calm and authoritative. It has been a long time. I see you are still using that contract template I taught you in '98. Clause 14 is still a bit weak on the liability side, isn't it? Caldwell's mouth opened and closed. He looked from me to the shabby tuxedo, then back to my eyes. Mr. Stone, he gasped, the name silencing the entire tent. Jackson Stone. Tyler laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. No, this is just Jack, my father-in-law. He is a farmer. He is confused. He thinks he knows you. Caldwell ignored Tyler completely. He stepped around the table, ignoring the mud on his expensive shoes, and stood in front of me. He bowed his head, a gesture of profound respect that sent a shockwave through the crowd. Sir Caldwell said, We didn't know the deed, the trust. It just said Stone Trust. We thought it was a coincidence. We thought you were dead, I finished, or retired, or just a senile old farmer who could be cheated out of his legacy. No, sir. Never. If we had known this was your land. Tyler stood up, his face flushing red. What is going on? Who cares who he is? He signed the paper. The land is mine to sell. Sign the check. I turned to Tyler. The look in my eyes made him take a step back. You really don't get it, do you, Tyler? I asked softly. You invited the sharks to dinner, but you forgot that I am the one who taught them how to hunt. The silence in the tent was heavy enough to crush a man, but Tyler was too far gone to feel the weight of it. He looked from me to Caldwell, his eyes darting back and forth like a trapped animal trying to find an exit that did not exist. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into the cheap fabric of the tuxedo jacket he had forced me to wear. With a strength born of pure panic, he hauled me toward the small stage he had erected at the front of the tent. He was trying to regain control of the narrative, trying to force the reality he needed into existence through sheer willpower. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tyler shouted, his voice cracking as he dragged me up the wooden steps. My father-in-law loves to joke. He has always had a dry sense of humor. But we are here for business. Serious business. He shoved me toward the podium. A microphone stand waited there, gleaming in the afternoon light. Tyler pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was a speech he had written for me, a humiliating declaration of my own incompetence and his brilliance. He slapped it onto the podium and leaned into my ear, his breath hot and smelling of stale whiskey. "Read the speech, Jack," he hissed. "Read it word for word. Tell them you are giving me the land. Tell them you trust me. If you deviate by one syllable, I will make sure Brittany never speaks to you again. I will put you in a home so dark, you will forget what the sun looks like." I looked at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. "I, Jackson Stone, being of sound mind, but failing body, hereby bequeath my legacy to my beloved son-in-law." It was a work of fiction, a lie designed to wash his sins away with my dignity. I looked out at the crowd. I saw the corrupt local officials sweating in their suits, sensing that the wind had changed, but unsure of where to run. I saw Brittany standing near the back, her face pale, her hands covering her mouth. And I saw Caldwell, standing tall and silent, watching me with the reverence of a soldier watching his general return to the battlefield. I reached out and took the microphone. It was heavy in my hand, a weapon of mass destruction if used correctly. I looked at Tyler. He was nodding, his eyes manic, urging me to start. He thought he had won. He thought the gun in the shed and the threats against my daughter were enough to break me. I cleared my throat. The sound echoed through the speakers, a boom of thunder that made the guests jump. "My son-in-law wrote a beautiful speech for me," I said, my voice steady and deep, carrying to the back of the tent without a tremor. "He wants me to tell you that I am tired, that I am confused, that I am ready to surrender the stewardship of this land to the next generation." Tyler smiled, a grotesque stretching of his lips. He nodded encouragingly to the crowd. "See, he is lucid. He knows what he is doing. But I am not going to read that speech." I continued, my tone dropping an octave, becoming colder, harder. "Because that speech is a lie. Just like the man standing next to me is a lie." Tyler's smile vanished. He stepped forward, reaching for the microphone. "Dad, that is enough. You are tired." I sidestepped him, keeping the mic close. I looked directly at the camera crew Tyler had hired to document his triumph. "This land has been in my family for 3 generations. We grew corn here when the rain failed. We held this dirt when the banks tried to take it. We bled for this soil. And I will be damned if I hand it over to a gambler and a thief who sees it only as a pile of lithium to be strip-mined to pay off his debts to the mob." A collective gasp ripped through the tent. Tyler lunged for me, his face twisted into a mask of pure fury. "Give me that." I held my ground. I didn't flinch. "This man," I roared, pointing a finger at Tyler, "has forged my signature. He has conspired to defraud the Sterling Energy Consortium. He has abused the elderly, and he has sold promises he cannot keep. This land does not belong to a fraudster. It belongs to the Stone Trust, and it is not for sale." Tyler snapped. The veneer of the successful businessman shattered, revealing the violent, desperate thug underneath. He drew back his fist, screaming an obscenity, aiming for my face. He didn't care about the witnesses anymore. He didn't care about the deal. He just wanted to silence the voice that was exposing him. But the blow never landed. From the long driveway, a sound erupted that drowned out Tyler's scream. Sirens. Not the wail of a local sheriff's cruiser, but the sharp, authoritative chirps of federal vehicles. We all turned. A convoy of black SUVs tore through the entrance of the ranch, smashing through the flimsy wooden gate Tyler had repaired. They moved with military precision, tires tearing up the grass surrounding the tent in seconds. Doors flew open before the vehicles even came to a full stop. Men and women in tactical gear spilled out their jackets emblazoned with yellow letters, FBI. Financial crimes. Tyler froze, his fist still raised in the air. He looked at the agents, then at me, his brain unable to process the speed of his destruction. Leading the charge was Benedict. He didn't look like a banker today. He looked like an executioner. He walked straight toward the stage, flanked by 2 federal agents. He carried a thick file in his hand. Tyler Jacobs Benedict announced, his voice projecting authority that needed no microphone. "Step away from Mr. Stone. Put your hands where we can see them." Tyler stumbled back, his hands trembling. "Who are you? You can't be here. This is private property. I own this land." "No, you don't," Benedict said, climbing the stairs to the stage. He stopped in front of Tyler and held up the document Tyler had forced me to sign in the shed. "The power of attorney." "This document is worthless," Benedict declared, turning to show it to Caldwell and the stunned lawyers. "The signature on this paper was flagged yesterday by our security algorithms as a distress signature. A specific variation Mr. Stone uses only when he is under immediate threat of bodily harm or death." The crowd murmured. Brittany let out a sob. Furthermore, Benedict continued relentlessly dismantling Tyler's reality. "Even if the signature were valid, you cannot sell this land. Stone Ranch is not personal property. It is the primary asset of the Stone family irrevocable trust. The beneficiary is Brittany Stone, but the trustee, the only person with the authority to sell, transfer, or leverage the assets, is Jackson Stone, and the trust charter specifically prohibits the sale of mineral rights to any entity without a unanimous vote of the board." Tyler looked at the paper in his hand. He looked at the agents surrounding the tent. He looked at me. But I have the deed," he stammered, holding up a piece of paper he had printed from the county records. "It says Jack Stone. It says Jackson Stone, trustee." I corrected him, my voice low. "You didn't read the fine print, Tyler. You were so busy counting your millions you didn't bother to check who actually owned the gold." Benedict signaled to the agents. "Tyler Jacobs, you are under arrest for bank fraud, wire fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit money laundering." 2 agents stepped onto the stage, pulling handcuffs from their belts. The metallic click of the cuffs locking around Tyler's wrists was the loudest sound in the world. "No," Tyler screamed, struggling as they spun him around. "This is a mistake." He signed it. "He gave it to me. Ask him. Ask the old man." He looked at me, his eyes pleading, desperate. "Jack, tell them you wanted this. Tell them we are partners." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had slapped me, who had threatened to kill me, who had turned my daughter against me. I adjusted the lapels of my oversized tuxedo jacket. "I don't have partners, Tyler," I said coldly. "I have employees, and you are fired." The agents began to drag him away. The reality of his situation crashed down on him. The mob debt was still unpaid. The money he had promised was gone. The prison cell was waiting, and he had nothing. Panic, raw and primal, took over. He wasn't just going to jail. He was going to his death if the Russos got to him. He needed leverage. He needed a shield. Tyler suddenly twisted, throwing his body weight against the agent holding his right arm. He broke free for a split second. He didn't run for the woods. He didn't run for a car. He ran toward the back of the crowd. He ran toward Brittany. The crowd screamed and scattered as Tyler lunged. He grabbed Brittany by the hair, yanking her violently in front of him. His hand dived into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver pistol, the one he had taken from his nightstand before the party, just in case. He pressed the gun to his wife's temple. My daughter's temple. "Back off," he shrieked, his voice shredding his throat. Back off, or I swear to God I will kill her. I will kill everyone. The FBI agents froze, their weapons drawn but useless, with a hostage in the line of fire. The silence returned, heavier and more terrifying than before. Brittany was sobbing, her mascara running down her face, her eyes locked on mine. "Dad," she whispered. "Daddy, help me." Tyler dragged her backward toward the house, using her body as a human shield. "It is your fault, Jack," he screamed at me, spittle flying from his mouth. "You did this. You couldn't just die. You couldn't just let me have it. Now look what you made me do." I stood on the stage, looking down at the monster I had allowed into my family. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. The time for games was over. The time for business was over. I stepped off the stage. I didn't put my hands up. I didn't beg. I walked toward him, one steady step at a time. "Let her go, Tyler," I said. "Stay back," he yelled, pressing the gun harder against Brittany's skin. "I mean it, old man. I will blow her brains out." "No, you won't," I said, keeping my eyes locked on his. "Because you are a coward. You hit old men. You threaten women. But you don't have the guts to pull that trigger when you know there are 20 federal agents waiting to turn you into Swiss cheese." I took another step. I was 10 feet away. "Drop the gun, Tyler. Your fight is with me." He wavered. His eyes darted to the agents, then to me. He was losing his grip. He was a cornered rat, and rats bite. "I hate you," he screamed. He shifted his aim. He took the gun off Brittany's head and leveled it at my chest. "Die!" He pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked through the air, deafening and final. The bullet tore through the fabric of my tuxedo jacket, grazing my shoulder with a searing kiss of heat before burying itself in the wooden support beam of the tent behind me. I didn't flinch. I didn't fall. I stood rooted to the stage, watching the smoke curl from the barrel of Tyler's gun. He stared at me, his eyes wide with the disbelief of a man who has fired at a ghost and missed. He pulled the trigger again. Click. A jam. The cheap silver pistol had failed him, just like every other shortcut he had taken in his life. He frantically racked the slide around, ejecting onto the floor, but it was too late for second chances. The spell of shock that had gripped the tent shattered. The screaming began. Guests dove under tables, overturning chairs and spilling crystal onto the grass. The FBI agents surged forward, their boots thundering against the ground weapons trained on the stage. "Drop it!" Benedict roared, moving toward the stairs. But before the federal agents could reach him, a new player entered the chaos. From the scattering crowd, a shape launched itself toward the stage with the speed and violence of a striking cobra. It was the large man from the porch, the debt collector who had driven the knife into the railing. He wasn't running away like the others. He was running toward his money. He vaulted onto the stage, ignoring the federal agents, his eyes locked on Tyler with a predatory intensity. He knew the feds meant asset forfeiture. He knew that if Tyler went into custody, the $5 million owed to the Russo family would vanish into the black hole of the justice system. He wanted his pound of flesh now. In his hand, a serrated combat knife glinted in the sunlight. "You are mine, Tyler!" the man bellowed, lunging forward. Tyler shrieked, a sound of pure, undiluted terror. He threw the useless gun at the hitman's face and scrambled backward, tripping over his own feet. The gun struck the man in the shoulder, doing nothing to slow his momentum. The knife slashed through the air, missing Tyler's throat by inches, slicing through the lapel of his white suit. Tyler rolled, scrambling on all fours like a crab, desperate for a shield, for a weapon, for anything to put between him and the death hurtling toward him. His hand scrabbled across the linen tablecloth of the signing table. His fingers closed around the handle of the heavy silver cake knife that had been laid out for the celebratory toast. It was sharp, serrated, and long. He lunged up, not at the hitman, but at the only leverage he had left. Brittany was standing frozen near the podium, paralyzed by the gunfire. Tyler grabbed her arm, spinning her around with a violence that made her cry out. He hauled her against his chest, wrapping his arm around her neck in a chokehold. He brought the cake knife up, pressing the serrated edge against the soft skin of her throat. "Back off," Tyler screamed, his voice shredding into hysteria. "I will kill her. I swear to God, I will open her up right here." The hitman skidded to a halt feet from them. He looked at the knife at Brittany's throat, then at the FBI agents who were now aiming rifles at his chest. He spat on the floor, dropped his combat knife, and raised his hands, calculating that a prison sentence was better than a sniper's bullet. Agents swarmed him, tackling him to the ground, but their eyes never left Tyler. The standoff settled into a terrifying stillness. The only sounds were the weeping of my daughter and the ragged, hyperventilating breaths of my son-in-law. He was backed against the rear support of the tent, using Brittany as a human shield. The silver blade dug into her skin. A single drop of blood welled up and trickled down her neck, staining the collar of her dress. "Dad," she whimpered, her eyes locking onto mine. "Daddy, please." Tyler's eyes darted around the tent, wild and unfocused. He saw the agents. He saw Benedict. He saw the ruin of his life closing in from every side. And he needed someone to blame. He couldn't accept that his own greed had brought him here. It had to be someone else's fault. It looked at me. "This is on you, Jack," he screamed, spit flying from his lips. "You did this. You set me up. You and your little banker friend. You ruined everything." I looked at him. I looked at the man threatening the life of my only child. And in that moment, the last remnants of the confused, harmless farmer evaporated. I reached up and tore off the oversized, moth-eaten tuxedo jacket, letting it fall to the floor. I ripped the piece of twine from my waist, letting the baggy work pants settle properly. I stood up to my full height, my spine straightening, my shoulders squaring. The transformation was physical, palpable. The air around me seemed to change. I wasn't just an old man anymore. I was the man who had stared down union bosses in steel mills. I was the man who had walked through construction sites that would terrify lesser men. I was Jackson Stone, and I was done hiding. I stepped forward, my boots hitting the wood of the stage with a heavy rhythmic thud. "Let her go, Tyler," I said. My voice was no longer the wavering rasp of an old man. It was deep, resonant, and cold as the grave. "Stay back," Tyler shrieked, pressing the knife harder. Brittany cried out in pain. "I will do it. I have nothing to lose." "You have your life," I said, taking another step. "And right now, that is a depreciating asset." I walked past the FBI agents. One of them reached out to stop me. "Sir, stay back. We have a negotiator en route." I brushed his hand aside without looking at him. "I don't need a negotiator. I need my daughter." I stopped 10 feet from Tyler. I looked him dead in the eye. I let him see the darkness I had been holding back for months. I let him see the wolf. "Look at me, Tyler," I commanded. He looked, and for the first time he really saw me. He saw the intelligence, the power, the absolute lack of fear. He realized that the man he had slapped, the man he had thrown in a shed, the man he had mocked had been an illusion. "You want to blame someone?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Blame yourself. Blame your greed. But do not dare blame me for the fact that you are weak." He trembled, the knife wavering slightly against Brittany's throat. You are nobody. You are a dirt farmer. I am your worst nightmare," I corrected him. "I am the man who built this world you are trying to steal, and I am the man who is going to take it back." I took another step, 5 feet. "Drop the knife." He shook his head frantically. No, you can't touch me. I have a hostage." "You have my daughter," I said, "and that is the biggest mistake you have made today." I took another step. I was within striking distance. I saw his muscles tensing. I saw the decision forming in his panicked brain. He was going to cut her. He was going to hurt her just to hurt me. "Drop it!" I roared, the command echoing like a gunshot. Tyler flinched. In that split second of hesitation, I moved. I didn't move like a 70-year-old. I moved with the muscle memory of a Marine who had survived Da Nang. I lunged forward, my left hand shooting out to grip his wrist, controlling the blade. My right hand drove it into his throat. Not a punch, but a strike, designed to incapacitate. Let her go. The impact was brutal. Tyler gagged his grip on the knife, loosening as his airway was crushed. I twisted his wrist, forcing the blade away from Brittany's neck. It clattered to the floor. Brittany collapsed, scrambling away on her hands and knees, sobbing. But I wasn't done. The rage I had buried for 6 months, the humiliation of the shed, the slap at the wedding, the disrespect to Martha's memory, it all poured out of me. I didn't let him fall. I grabbed him by the lapels of his ruined white suit and slammed him against the support beam of the tent. You thought I was weak, I hissed into his face, my eyes boring into his terrified soul. You thought because I loved peace I had forgotten how to fight. I swept his legs out from under him, driving him into the floorboards. I pinned him there, my knee on his chest, my hand gripping his jaw, forcing him to look at me. Your opponent is me, Tyler. Not the bank, not the mob. Me. And you just lost. I stood up, smoothing my shirt. I looked down at him, gasping for air on the floor, a broken, weeping mess. Get him out of my sight, I said to the agents. As they swarmed in to cuff him, I turned to where Brittany was huddled on the floor. I walked over to her. I didn't offer a hug. Not yet. I just stood there, the patriarch returned, waiting for her to look up and see the father she had forgotten. The silence that followed the gunshot was shattered not by a scream, but by a roar. Tyler had missed the bullet, burying itself harmlessly in the wooden beam above my head, but the intent was clear. He wanted me dead. And in that split second of violence, the tether of my restraint snapped. I wasn't an old man anymore. I wasn't a victim. I was a soldier who had just been fired upon. Tyler stood there, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with the realization that he had crossed a line from which there was no return. He fumbled with the gun, trying to clear the jam, his fingers slick with sweat. The crowd screamed, diving for cover, expecting a massacre. I didn't dive. I charged. I moved with a speed that defied my 70 years, fueled by a lifetime of suppressed rage. Tyler looked up just in time to see me closing the distance. Panic flared in his eyes. He abandoned the useless gun, throwing it at my face, and reached for the cake knife on the table again. He wasn't going to shoot me. He was going to butcher me. He lunged, swinging the serrated blade in a wild, desperate arc aimed at my throat. "Kill him," someone screamed. I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. I stepped into the strike. It was a move that went against every survival instinct, but I knew exactly what I was doing. As his arm came down, I raised my left forearm, blocking his wrist with a bone-jarring thud. The knife slashed the air inches from my ear. I grabbed his wrist with a grip like iron. I twisted his arm outward, locking his elbow. Tyler screamed as the joint was pushed to its limit. I didn't stop. I stepped inside his guard, pivoting on my heel, my hip slamming into his midsection. It was a classic hip throw, a technique I had learned in the Corps 50 years ago, ingrained in my muscle memory, deeper than my own name. I used his momentum, his weight, and his blind fury against him. I pulled. He flew. For a heartbeat, my son-in-law was airborne, his legs kicking helplessly in the void. Then gravity took over. He slammed into the wooden floorboards of the stage with a crash that shook the entire tent. The impact knocked the breath out of him. The knife skittered away across the floor. He groaned, trying to push himself up, trying to scramble away, but I was already there. I dropped my knee onto his chest, pinning him to the ground with all my weight. I grabbed his right arm, the one that had held the knife, the one that had slapped me, and I wrenched it behind his back, applying pressure until I felt the tendons strain. He howled, his face pressed into the dirt and dust of the floorboards. "Let go. You are breaking it." I leaned down, my face inches from his ear. I wanted him to hear me. I wanted him to know exactly who had beaten him. "I have tolerated you long enough, Tyler." I hissed, my voice a low, dangerous rumble. "I tolerated your disrespect. I tolerated your greed. I even tolerated your stupidity. But when you touched my daughter, you signed your own death warrant." I pulled his arm higher. He shrieked, tapping the floor with his free hand, begging for mercy. "Please," he sobbed, tears mixing with the snot running down his face. I am sorry, I didn't mean it. You called me weak, I whispered. You called me useless. Do I feel useless now? No, no. Please, Jack. The FBI agents swarmed the stage, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Drop him, step away, but they didn't shoot. They saw the control I had. They saw that the threat was neutralized not by their bullets, but by the old farmer in the tattered tuxedo. Benedict stepped through the line of agents. He walked calmly up to the stage, looking down at the scene with a grim satisfaction. He placed a hand gently on my shoulder. Sir Benedict said quietly, "It is done. He is finished. Let them take the trash out." I looked at Benedict. I looked at the weeping, broken man beneath me. The red haze of combat began to fade, replaced by a cold, weary clarity. I released Tyler's arm and stood up. I didn't struggle. I rose with dignity, dusting off my hands. Two agents immediately pounced on Tyler, hauling him up from the floor. They slammed him against the support beam, wrenching his arms back to cuff him. The metallic click of the handcuffs was loud in the sudden silence of the tent. "Get off me!" Tyler wailed, struggling weakly. "This is a mistake. He attacked me. He is crazy. You are under arrest for attempted murder, bank fraud, and kidnapping." An agent recited, his voice bored and professional. Tyler looked around frantically, searching for an escape, for an ally. He saw the guests staring at him with horror and disgust. He saw Mr. Caldwell shaking his head, turning his back on him. And then he saw me. "Jack," he screamed, his voice cracking. "Help me, pay them. You have the money. You have the trust. Don't let them take me. The Russos will kill me in prison." I looked at him. I saw the man who had thrown my clothes in the dirt. The man who had locked me out of my own home. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silk handkerchief Benedict had given me. I wiped a speck of blood from my lip. "I don't pay ransoms, Tyler," I said coldly. "And I certainly don't pay for lessons you need to learn on your own." The agents dragged him away. He kicked and screamed, his heels dragging in the dirt, wailing like a child, until they shoved him into the back of a black SUV. The door slammed shut, sealing him in his new reality. The silence that returned to the ranch was heavy. The guests stood frozen, unsure of what to do. It was over. The show was over. I turned my attention to the corner of the stage. Brittany was kneeling on the floor, her expensive dress stained with mud. She was shaking violently, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at the spot where her husband had tried to kill her father. I walked over to her. The sound of my boots on the wood was the only noise in the tent. I stopped in front of her. She didn't look up. She couldn't. "Brittany," I said softly. She flinched. She let out a sob that sounded like something tearing. "I didn't know," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Dad, I swear. I didn't know about the gun. I didn't know he would—" I looked down at my daughter. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to tell her it was all going to be fine. But it wasn't fine. She had watched him abuse me for months. She had chosen his side until the very moment a knife was at her throat. "You didn't want to know," I said gently but firmly. "You chose not to see." She looked up at me then. Her eyes were red, her face swollen. She looked at me and she finally saw me. Not the old man she had pitied, but the man who had just saved her life. "Who are you?" she whispered. You aren't just a farmer." Benedict stepped forward, holding a black garment bag. He unzipped it and pulled out a charcoal gray suit jacket. It was impeccable. It was powerful. He held it out to me. I slipped my arms into the jacket. It fit perfectly. I buttoned it, feeling the weight of my past returning. I adjusted my cuffs. I looked at my daughter, then at the crowd of stunned onlookers. "I am Jackson Stone," I said, my voice ringing out with the authority of a man who owns the ground he stands on. "And I am taking back my house." Brittany covered her face with her hands and collapsed completely, weeping into the floorboards. I stood over her, a sentinel, a protector, and a father, who had finally done what was necessary. The war was won. But as I looked at my broken daughter, I knew the hardest part was just beginning. The dust from the federal SUVs had barely settled, hanging in the hot Texas air, like a golden mist, but the silence that descended on the tent was heavier than the noise had ever been. The guests who had been scrambling for the exits minutes ago now stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a curiosity that outweighed their fear. They looked from the empty space where Tyler had been dragged away to the stage where I stood dusting the dirt from the lapels of the charcoal gray jacket Benedict had just helped me into. I wasn't the scarecrow anymore. I wasn't the servant. I was the center of gravity. Benedict stepped closer, ignoring the FBI agents securing the perimeter and the weeping of my daughter on the floorboards. He reached into his breast pocket and produced a square of pristine white silk. He held it out to me with both hands, a gesture of deference he hadn't shown in years, not because he had to, but because he wanted them to see it. Chairman Stone Benedict said, his voice cutting through the quiet like a bell. "Are you injured? Do you require a medic?" The title hung in the air. Chairman Stone. Not Jack. Not the old man. Chairman. I took the handkerchief and wiped the remaining blood from my lip, looking at the crimson stain on the white silk. No, Benedict. I am fine. Just a scratch. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. I saw Mr. Henderson, the corrupt planning commissioner who had tried to flee earlier, leaning against a tent pole, his face the color of ash. I saw the bank manager's wife clutching her pearls, realizing she had mocked a man who could buy her husband's bank with petty cash. And I saw Jonathan Caldwell, the CEO of Sterling Energy, walking slowly toward the stage, his expression one of dawning horror and immense respect. Jackson, Caldwell said, stopping at the foot of the stairs. "My God, it is you. We thought the rumors said you had died in Europe 10 years ago." "I didn't die, Jonathan," I said, my voice projecting effortlessly to the back of the tent. "I just retired. I wanted peace. I wanted to grow corn and watch the sunset. But it seems peace is a luxury I cannot afford anymore." I walked down the steps, the crowd parting for me like the Red Sea. I stopped in front of the table where the unsigned contract still lay. I picked up the gold pen Tyler had dropped. I turned it over in my fingers, feeling the cheap weight of it. My son-in-law wanted to be rich. I addressed the crowd, looking at each of the opportunists who had come to feast on my carcass. He wanted to be a player. He thought money was the only thing that mattered. He didn't understand that money is just a tool. Power is knowing when to use it. I snapped the pen in half and tossed the pieces onto the table. Tyler owed $5 million to the Russo crime family. I continued, my voice conversational but deadly. He was going to sell my land, my wife's legacy, to pay a gambling debt. He thought he was clever. He thought he had found a way out. I looked at Benedict. He nodded and handed me a thin blue file folder. I opened it. "What Tyler didn't know," I said, holding up a document, "is that debts are commodities. They can be bought and sold just like stocks or real estate. And when I found out who held his paper, I made a call. I walked over to where the local reporter was standing, camera still rolling, capturing every word. The Russo family are businessmen. They don't care who pays them as long as they get paid. So this morning at 9 o'clock, Stone Industries purchased the debt of Tyler Jacobs in full. I wired $5 million to an offshore account and bought the note." A murmur of confusion ran through the guests. They didn't understand the implications yet. But Brittany did. She lifted her head from her hands, her eyes wide and terrified. What does that mean?" she whispered. I turned to her. "It means, Brittany, that Tyler doesn't owe the mob anymore. The mob is out of the equation. They have their money. They won't touch him." She let out a breath, a small sound of relief. "Oh, thank God. You saved him. You paid it off." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Saved him? No, dear. You aren't listening. I bought the debt. I didn't forgive it. I walked back up the stairs and stood over her. Tyler now owes $5 million to me, to Jackson Stone. And unlike the mob, I don't break legs. I use the law. I use the system. Tyler is going to federal prison for fraud and attempted murder. And while he is in there, interest will accrue. Every single day. When he gets out in 10 or 15 years, he will still owe me. He will work for the rest of his miserable life, and every paycheck he earns will be garnished. He will never own a house. He will never own a car. He will never have a credit card. He belongs to me. The brutality of it stunned the room. It was a fate worse than death for a man like Tyler. I had stripped him of his future. I had ensured that he would never ever rise again. It was the ultimate punishment for the man who had slapped me. He was now a slave to the man he had called useless. Brittany stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. She couldn't process the man standing in front of her. This wasn't the father who had driven her to ballet practice. This was a titan who had just crushed a rival without breaking a sweat. "But Dad," she stammered, scrambling to her feet. He is my husband. We are family. You can't do this to us." "Us?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "There is no us, Brittany. There is you and there is him, and you made your choice." I turned away from her, signaling to Benedict. "Clear the property. I want everyone off my land in 10 minutes. Anyone still here gets trespassing charges." I started to walk toward the farmhouse, intent on washing the dirt of the shed from my skin and reclaiming my home. But I heard the sound of running footsteps behind me. Daddy Brittany launched herself at me. She threw her arms around my legs, falling to her knees in the dirt, burying her face in the fabric of my expensive trousers. She was sobbing hysterically, the same way she used to when she was 5 and had scraped her knee. "Daddy, please, I am sorry. I didn't know I was scared. Don't leave me. I have nowhere to go. He ruined everything. Please, Daddy, take care of me." I stopped. I looked down at my daughter, clinging to me like a drowning woman. I felt the old instinct, the father's instinct, to reach down, pick her up, and tell her I would fix it. To tell her that I had enough money to buy her a new life, to erase her mistakes, to make the pain go away. It would be so easy. I could write a check and she would be safe. But then I remembered the wedding. I remembered her turning her face away when I was on the ground. I remembered her standing in the doorway of the shed while Tyler held a gun to my head, telling me to sign. I remembered her choosing the lie because the truth was too hard. If I picked her up now, if I saved her again, she would never learn. She would never grow. She would just find another Tyler, another parasite to attach herself to, expecting me to bail her out when it went wrong. I reached down. I placed my hands on her shoulders. Her sobbing stopped for a second, hopeful. I firmly detached her arms from my legs. I stepped back, putting 3 feet of distance between us. "No, Brittany," I said, my voice breaking with a pain she couldn't possibly understand. She looked up at me, shocked. "What?" I said. "No, I am not going to take care of you. You are 32 years old. You stood by and watched your husband humiliate me. You watched him steal from me. You watched him hold a knife to your own throat. And you still blamed me for ruining the deal." "But I am your daughter," she wailed. "And I am your father," I said. "And because I love you, I am going to let you fall. You need to see the bottom, Brittany. You need to know what it feels like to stand on your own 2 feet without my wallet holding you up." I turned my back on her. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Harder than building the company. Harder than fighting the takeover. Harder than burying Martha. "Benedict," I said, not looking back. "Give her a ride to the motel in town. Pay for 1 week. After that, she is on her own." I walked toward the house, the sound of her screaming my name echoing in my ears, tearing at my heart. But I didn't stop. I walked up the steps of the porch, punched the code into the smart lock Tyler had installed, and opened the door to my home. I walked inside and closed the door, locking the world, and my daughter outside. The air inside the federal detention center was sterile and cold, smelling of industrial cleaner and despair. It was a stark contrast to the dusty heat of the ranch, but in many ways it felt more honest. Here there were no pretenses, no fake smiles, no borrowed suits. There were just steel bars and consequences. I sat on the metal stool in the visitation booth, my hands folded calmly on the stainless steel ledge. I waited. The door on the other side buzzed and opened. Tyler shuffled in. The transformation was pathetic. Gone was the white linen suit, replaced by a bright orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was greasy and matted. His eyes were rimmed with red, darting around the room as if looking for a way out that didn't exist. When he saw me, his face lit up with a desperate, delusional hope. He practically ran to the chair, grabbing the phone receiver with trembling hands. "Jack," he breathed, pressing the phone to his ear. "Thank God. I knew you would come. I knew you wouldn't leave me in here. You have to get me out. The food is slop. The guards are animals. You have the money now. Benedict said you are worth billions. You can pay the bail. It is just money to you." I picked up my receiver slowly. I looked at him through the thick, scratched plexiglass. I didn't feel anger anymore. The rage that had fueled me on the stage had burned itself out, leaving behind only a cold, hard resolve. "Hello, Tyler," I said. "You have to talk to the judge," he rushed on, ignoring my tone. "Tell him it was a misunderstanding. Tell him I was under duress from the mob. You can hire the best lawyers. We can fight this. And listen, about the ranch, I was just trying to maximize assets. I have a head for business, Jack. I can help you run Stone Industries. We can be a team." I listened to him babble, amazed at the depth of his narcissism. Even here in chains, he thought he could manipulate me. He thought he could charm his way out of a federal indictment. He still didn't understand who I was. "Stop," I said. The word was quiet, but it cut through his rambling like a blade. He fell silent, his mouth hanging open. "I am not here to bail you out, Tyler. I am not here to hire lawyers for you. And I am certainly not here to offer you a job." Tyler's face fell. "Then why are you here to gloat, to laugh at me?" "I am here to settle accounts," I said. "I told you at the wedding that I handle my own business. I bought your debt from the Russo family. $5 million, plus interest, plus penalties." Tyler scoffed, a flash of his old arrogance returning. "So what, I am in prison? I can't pay you. You wasted your money." "No," I corrected him. "I made an investment. You see, if the mob held your debt, they would just kill you. And then it would be over. You would get off easy. But because I hold the debt I have standing, I will be at every parole hearing. I will be the first creditor in line for every cent you earn in the prison laundry. I will ensure that when you eventually walk out of this place 40 years from now, you will still belong to me." Tyler slammed his fist against the glass. "You are crazy. You are a sad, vindictive old man." I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto his. "Do you remember the wedding, Tyler? Do you remember standing on that stage looking down at me? Do you remember the sound of your hand hitting my face?" He flinched, the memory clearly visceral. "That slap cost $5 million, I said softly. "It was the most expensive mistake of your life, and you have just finished paying for it with your freedom." I hung up the phone. Tyler started screaming, slamming the receiver against the glass, shouting obscenities, begging, threatening. The guards stepped forward, grabbing him by the arms. As they dragged him away, kicking and screaming back toward his cell, I didn't look back. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out of the prison. The air outside tasted sweet. One problem solved. One to go. My driver took me to the cheap motel on the edge of town where Benedict had dropped Brittany. It was a rundown place with peeling paint and a neon sign that buzzed incessantly. It was the kind of place where people ended up when they had nowhere else to go. It was exactly where she needed to be. I found her sitting on the curb outside room 12, smoking a cigarette. I didn't know she smoked. She looked up as the car approached, shielding her eyes from the sun. When she saw me get out, she crushed the cigarette under her heel and stood up, smoothing her wrinkled dress. She looked exhausted, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing the pale, frightened girl underneath. "Dad," she said, her voice hopeful. "You came back." I stopped a few feet away from her. I didn't open my arms. I didn't smile. "I came to bring you this," I said, reaching into my pocket. I pulled out a thick envelope and held it out. She took it, her hands shaking. She opened it and looked inside. There was a cashier's check for $5,000 and a one-way plane ticket to Seattle. "What is this?" she asked, confusion clouding her eyes. "It is a start," I said. "But I thought you were coming to take me home," she stammered. "To the ranch. I can help you fix it up. I can take care of you. We can be a family again. Tyler is gone. It is just us now." I looked at her, feeling the crack in my heart widen. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to take her home and pretend none of this had happened. But I knew that would be the worst thing I could do for her. She had stood by while her husband abused me. She had watched him hold a knife to her own throat and still blamed me. She was broken, and my money couldn't fix her. Only she could fix herself. "You can't come home, Brittany," I said, my voice steady but heavy with sorrow. "Not yet. Maybe not for a long time." "But why?" she cried, tears spilling over. "I am your daughter. You are rich, you have everything. Why are you punishing me?" "I am not punishing you," I said gently. "I am trying to save you. You are 32 years old, Brittany, and you have never stood on your own 2 feet. You went from my house to Tyler's house. You let him think for you. You let him speak for you. You let him turn you into a coward who watched her father bleed and did nothing." She looked down at the ground, shame flooding her face. "If I take you back now," I continued, "you will just learn that you can make terrible mistakes, and Daddy will always write a check to fix them. You will never respect yourself, and you will never require respect from the men in your life." I pointed to the envelope in her hand. "There is $5,000 there. That is enough for a deposit on a small apartment and a month of food. The ticket is for Seattle. It is a good city, far away from here, far away from the gossip, far away from me." "Seattle," she whispered. "I don't know anyone in Seattle." "Good," I said. "Then you can be anyone you want to be. You can get a job. You can pay your own bills. You can find out who Brittany Stone really is when she isn't hiding behind a man." She looked at the ticket, then at me. The fear in her eyes was real, but for the first time I saw a glimmer of something else. Determination. Anger. It didn't matter. Anything was better than the passive acceptance she had lived with for years. "And if I fail," she asked quietly. "What if I can't do it? Then you fail," I said, "and you try again. That is what stones do. We survive." I stepped closer and kissed her on the forehead. It was a goodbye kiss. "When you have earned your first $10,000, I said, pulling back to look her in the eye. "When you have made it on your own, without my help, without Tyler, without anyone. Then you call me. Then you can come home. Not as my dependent, but as my daughter." She nodded slowly, clutching the envelope to her chest. She understood. It was harsh. It was brutal. But it was the only way. "Goodbye, Dad," she whispered. "Goodbye, sweetheart," I said. I turned around and walked back to the car. I didn't watch her go back into the motel room. I didn't watch her pack. I got into the back seat and told the driver to take me home. As the car pulled away, I felt a single tear roll down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. I had done what had to be done. I had destroyed the enemy, and I had set my daughter free, even if she didn't realize it yet. The drive back to the ranch was quiet. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cornfields. The land was still there. The earth remained. Tyler was gone. Brittany was gone. Martha was gone. I was alone. But as the farmhouse came into view, free of the tents and the trucks and the noise, I didn't feel lonely. I felt a strange, deep peace, the kind of peace that comes after a storm has scrubbed the world clean. I was Jackson Stone. I was 70 years old, and for the first time in a long time, my life belonged entirely to me. I had a legacy to rebuild, a trust to manage, and a foundation to launch in my father's name. The old lion wasn't ready to sleep yet. There was still work to be done. I watched the fence posts blur by, standing straight and tall against the twilight, just like me. Unbroken. The next morning began not with the rooster's crow, but with the screech of tearing metal. I stood at the main gate of Stone Ranch, with a heavy iron crowbar in my hand, facing the electronic keypad Tyler had installed. The little red light blinked at me, a persistent electronic eye that had barred me from my own home just days ago. I didn't call a locksmith. I didn't look for the code. I jammed the tip of the crowbar behind the plastic casing and leaned back with all my weight. The plastic cracked with a satisfying snap, sparks showering onto the dry dirt as the wires were ripped from their housing. I tossed the broken device into a metal bucket, the clatter echoing across the silent fields. It felt like pulling a tick off a dog. I spent the next 4 hours methodically purging the ranch of every trace of Tyler's occupation. I climbed a ladder to the eaves of the porch and tore down the wireless surveillance cameras he had hidden there to spy on me. I ripped out the motion sensors in the hallway that beeped every time I walked to the kitchen. I dismantled the high-tech sound system he had wired into the living room walls. By noon, the house was silent again. It no longer hummed with electricity and Wi-Fi signals. It breathed. I went to the barn and found my old heavy iron padlock, the one my father had used. It was rusted heavy and reliable. I hung it on the gate and clicked it shut. A simple key. No codes, no servers, no facial recognition, just steel. I spent the afternoon in the fields. The tents were gone, taken down by a crew Benedict had hired. The grass was trampled and muddy where the stage had been, a scar on the land, but grass grows back. The earth heals. I walked the rows of corn, touching the stalks, checking the soil. It was dry, thirsty for rain, but it was alive. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a guest on my own land. I felt like the steward I was meant to be. The wind rustled through the leaves, whispering the name of the woman who had loved this place, and I finally felt that I could answer her. I had kept my promise, Martha. I had held the line. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the Texas sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges, I saw a dust trail on the logging road. The black Lincoln sedan approached slowly, respectful of the ruts and bumps. Benedict parked near the house and stepped out. He wasn't wearing his usual suit jacket today, just a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking as relaxed as a man like him could ever look. He walked up the porch steps where I was sitting in my rocking chair, a mug of black coffee in my hand. "Good evening, Mr. Stone," Benedict said, leaning against the railing. "It is a good evening, Benedict," I agreed, gesturing to the empty chair beside me. "Sit down. You look like you have news." He sat, dusting off the seat with his handkerchief before settling in. "I do, sir. The news cycle is in a frenzy. Stone Industries stock is up 12% since the story broke. The market loves a strong leader, and apparently taking down a fraudster on live television counts as strong leadership." I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter and hot, just the way I liked it. "The market is a fickle beast, Benedict. Today they love me. Tomorrow they will say I am too old and dangerous. I don't care about the stock price." Benedict smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "The board of directors does. They had an emergency meeting this morning. They voted unanimously to ask you to return as active CEO. They want you back in the corner office, Mr. Stone. They want the Lion of Chicago back at the helm. They say you are the only one who can steer the ship through the next decade. I looked out at the fields, watching the shadows stretch longer. I thought about the office in the city, the glass and steel, the power lunches, the constant ringing of phones, the deals that moved millions. I thought about the rush of adrenaline I had felt when I took Tyler down the familiarity of command. It would be easy to go back. It would be comfortable. I could be the tycoon again, respected, feared, surrounded by luxury. Then I looked at the dirt under my fingernails. I looked at the old tractor shed where I had slept for a week. I looked at the peace that had finally settled over the ranch. "Tell them no," I said quietly. Benedict didn't look surprised. "Are you sure, sir? It is a lot of power to walk away from." Again. "I am not walking away, Benedict. I am walking towards something better. I spent 40 years building that company. I gave it my blood, my sweat, and my youth. It took time away from my wife. It took time away from my daughter. I am not giving it the rest of my life." I pointed toward the cornfield. "Look at that, Benedict. That corn doesn't care about stock prices. It doesn't care about quarterly reports. It just grows. It is honest. If you treat it right, it feeds you. If you neglect it, it dies. There is no fraud in nature." "I understand," Benedict said. "And what about the trust? What about the assets you keep managing them?" I said. "Keep the sharks away. Make sure the foundation we discussed gets funded. I want to build a center for victims of financial abuse. I want to help people who don't have a Benedict in their corner." "Consider it done," he said. He stood up, preparing to leave. He hesitated for a moment, looking at me with a strange expression. "You know, sir, when you called me last week, I was worried. I thought perhaps you really were slipping. That maybe Tyler was right." I looked up at him, my eyes crinkling at the corners. "And now," Benedict said, putting his hand on the railing, "I think you are the most dangerous man I know, because you have absolutely nothing left to lose, and you have everything you want right here." He walked down the steps and got into his car. I watched him drive away until the taillights disappeared around the bend. I was alone again. But for the first time in years, silence wasn't empty. It was full. I reached down beside my chair and picked up an object I had found in the dirt near the tent earlier that day. It was my old cowboy hat, the Stetson I had worn for 20 years. It had been knocked off my head when Tyler slapped me. It was dusty and trampled, misshapen from being stepped on by the fleeing guests. I brushed it off, reshaping the brim with my hands. I put it on my head, pulling it low over my eyes. It fit perfectly. I wasn't the billionaire Jackson Stone. I wasn't the senile old man Jack. I was something else entirely. I was the keeper of the gate. I was the man who stood between the wolves and the flock. Tyler had made the mistake of thinking that kindness was weakness. He had looked at my gray hair and my slow walk and seen a victim. He hadn't seen the iron that held my spine together. He hadn't seen the history written in my scars. He was sitting in a cell right now, realizing that the world didn't work the way he thought it did. He was learning that actions had echoes, that debts always came due. And Brittany was in a cheap apartment in Seattle, learning how to boil water and pay an electric bill. She was learning how to be human. I took another sip of coffee, the heat spreading through my chest. The sun was gone now, leaving behind a sky full of stars, the kind you can only see out here away from the city lights. "I am Jack Stone," I whispered to the night. "I am a farmer. I am a father. And I am the man who cleans up the mess." I rocked back in the chair, the wood creaking a familiar rhythm. Let the world think I am just an old man sitting on a porch. Let them underestimate me. It makes it so much easier to see who they really are. Because if there is one lesson I taught Tyler, one lesson I hope echoes through the halls of that prison and reaches anyone else who thinks they can come onto my land and take what is mine, it is this: you can take my money. You can take my reputation. You can even take my patience. But if you touch my family, if you threaten the people I swore to protect, you will find out that the old man on the porch is not praying for forgiveness. He is waiting for you to cross the line. And when you do, you won't lose your money. You won't lose your job. You will lose everything. I finished my coffee, set the mug on the railing, and watched the fireflies dancing over the corn. The weeds had been pulled. The pests had been removed. The harvest was going to be good this year. This journey taught me that silence is often mistaken for weakness by those who lack integrity. For years, I thought keeping the peace was my duty, but I realized that peace without respect is just submission. Tyler believed money was power, but he learned that character is the only currency that matters. We must stop setting ourselves on fire to keep ungrateful people warm. True love sometimes requires the hardest no you will ever say. Never let anyone, even family, make you feel small in a house you built. Dignity is non-negotiable, and consequences are the only true teachers. If you believe in standing your ground, hit that like button to show that justice still matters. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save yourself? Tell me your story in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel for more life stories. Stay strong.